if my 9-year-old kid said to me, Mom, I want to move to another state and train 46 hours a week in my sport, of course, today I would
Mhm.
say, absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
it's about family and things. My parents, both of them are immigrants and both have their like incredibly traumatic and
Mhm.
harrowing journeys
Sure.
to the United States and even in the
Sure.
United States.
Sure.
They really try to give me everything that they
Yeah.
didn't have. And so they were nothing but love and support. And a lot of times they just didn't know what to do. I mean, English as their second language, English as a
Mhm.
second language in our home, because my dad's
Mhm.
Filipino and my mom is originally from North Korea. But they were really like, we're just going to trust that these are the experts. We're
Mhm.
not experts
Mhm.
of gymnastics.
Mhm.
So you're going to go to the expert of gymnastics. And that happened to be at the time in Houston, Texas. So, they really had nothing
Sure.
but love and support for
Sure.
me.
Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Miller, and today's guest is Laura Han Segundo Collins. We are going to dive into so much stuff. Laura has an amazing story. She was an elite gymnast. She was a freaking Division I diver. She lived inside that all or nothing crazy world of elite sports and perfectionism and stress that came with being a young athlete. And she now draws on that journey to help leaders, parents, athletes, and clinicians move from imposter syndrome and burnout towards clarity, resilience, and genuine belonging. It's all about how to become whole, right? So thank you so much, Laura, for being with us today.
Oh my God. Thomas, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here.
Yeah. And, there's, of course, this is a parenting podcast, and you are also a mama, right? So
Mhm.
shout that out really quick. You're a mom, right? Talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a parent to an athlete as well. So it's really
Yeah.
come full circle of
Yeah.
having that early experience to having now a young person in sports too.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
one of the things I love, in our conversations offline, preparing for this interview is just, how there's really great stuff in that whole sports world. And as you know, I have two boys who play at a high level at soccer, and I played in college, not as accomplished as you in terms of my athletic career. There's great stuff and there's some not so great stuff. And we're going to dive into how do we as parents, oh my God, help navigate this crazy world? Because if it's up to the club director of whatever sport, whether it's gymnastics or tennis or lacrosse or soccer or whatever, right? They're going to give you one story. If it's up to, the next crazy parent, and then there's parents that, of course, don't even understand that we want our kids, of course, to push past, right, self-limiting beliefs and to face hardship. But it's just all about how to not, throw the baby out with the bathwater or drink all the Kool-Aid. So you're going to be our guide. You're going to solve all that for us in about
Oh
40
God.
minutes. No,
We'll
just
solve it
kidding.
together.
Exactly. So talk to us about, because your why, and I know your why, and it's just this amazing, compelling story of what got you into this space. And it's so beautiful to know that that shows up each and every day in the work you do as a psychotherapist to prevent burnout, right? So that you can help these amazing athletes, young adults, leaders, whomever, right, know how to be hard on themselves in a good way and push past, again, self-limitations and have an abundance mindset, but also not be a masochist or be too hard and become burnt out. So tell us about your come up.
Oh, thank you for that. For the record, I'm still a work in progress. I mean, I'm going to say these things and I'm going to share this journey, which I'll try to keep as brief as possible because the journey itself is spanning over 3 decades. But I am still a work in progress as we speak. I am
Me
constantly
too.
working on my own stuff as you are, and we shared together, which
Mhm.
in some ways is really cool going through my own process and learning and evolution as I'm also raising two kids. I have also got two sons, but one is an athlete, and supporting him in his journey with his sport and all, the pressure and stress and joy and fun of his sport. So just to begin with the journey myself is that, yeah, I was an elite gymnast by the time I was about 10. I had moved to Houston, Texas with my sister, who was my guardian then. And we spent 3 years there, basically living an entire life of gymnastics, like 46 hours in the gym at least. Sometimes
Oof.
it'd be 7 days a week. We were lucky if we got about like a week off to 2 weeks off per year. That's usually when in the off
Say it
season.
one more time. Say it one more time. A week off to
two
two
weeks per
every.
year.
per
per
year,
year.
and you're 10.
I'm 10.
You're
Yeah.
10 at this time, right?
Actually, correction, my sister did tell me that she reminded me that when we moved to Houston, I was 9, actually. So it was about 9 to 12, which is
So,
kind of
so you
wild,
know, it's
actually.
funny. Like, if you had a client now who's like telling you about, like, oh, I'm like thinking of this new job, and the pay's like pretty good, it's okay, but the benefit is only 1 week a year of vacation of
Right?
PTO, you would be like, hell no, like
No,
cease and desist, and that's like a
100%.
40-year-old person. Never mind, you're being freaking 9. It's like, oh my god, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, so like a little side comment here is that to date in the United States, we have child labor laws for work. We don't have
Mm,
child labor laws for sports.
mm,
So, I mean, to date, I know that there tends to be mindfulness around the amount of hours that kids train. And at the NCAA level, there is an actual rule about how
mm-hmm,
much student athletes are supposed to train per week. We don't have that for kid athletes, which is to
mm-hmm,
date in existence.
mm-hmm.
So we don't
Wow,
something to think
wow,
about when we
yeah,
are advocating for our kids in like a healthier sports world.
sure.
But yeah, so this is like this is the old regime of gymnastics. Maybe it still exists. I don't know. I'm 30 years out of it now, but it was a particular time in the history of gymnastics where, you went to sort of the one or two places in the United States where you go and they kind of talk about feed you the Kool-Aid and we all took it.
Mm,
But it stems from an old regime as well of
mm,
sort of the centers of sports where like kids would go and they would just live their life. Life was secondary to
mm-hmm,
sport, actually.
mm-hmm.
So, in Russia, in China, later on in Australia, they would have these like sports center where you basically lived your life in your sport and then maybe you'd go to school. It's like, but that's what it was back in 1988, yeah, I was there 88, like end of 87 through 90. And that's your whole world. Your friends are the same people you compete against. So you had some people you trusted, you had a lot of people
Mhm,
you didn't. There's a lot of
mhm.
politics, a
Oh my
lot of
god.
parent politics and division and alignments and a lot of trying to gain favor with coaches. So you get
Mhm,
playing time or you get competition time or
mhm,
you get attention during practices. So there's a lot of that. My sister could speak so much about
mhm.
that world because I mean, she was herself a kid when we were in Houston. She was only 19 when we moved there and
Wow.
was my
Well,
guardian.
you
So
said she was your guard. I was gonna say, so she was wearing, like, 2 hats at least,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, caretaker-ish slash also trying to go through this process at such a high level herself. That's, like, amazing.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally, and then still trying to go to college and, like, work and pay
Mm,
rent and all these things too,
yeah.
just lots and lots of hats. And people always ask, like, "Where are your parents?" But our parents had the full-time stable jobs in California, so they stayed in California, and they're immigrant parents. So,
Mhm,
a question that I get a lot is like, "Oh, is it your will or was it your parents' will?" And I can actually positively say that it was mine, and
mhm,
this goes to back in the day. If my 9-year-old kid said to me, Mom, I want to move to another state and train 46 hours a week in my sport, of course, today I would
mhm.
say, absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's about family and things. My parents, both of them are immigrants and both have their like incredibly traumatic and
Mhm.
harrowing
Sure,
journeys to the United States and even in the
sure,
United States.
sure.
They really try to give me everything that they
Yeah.
didn't have. And so they were nothing but love and support. And a lot of times they just didn't know what to do. I mean, English as their second language, English as
Mhm,
a second language in our home, because my dad's
mhm.
Filipino and my mom isn't originally from North Korea. But they were really like, we're just going to trust that these are the experts. We're
Mhm,
not experts
mhm,
of gymnastics.
mhm.
So you're going to go to the expert of gymnastics. And that happened to be at the time in Houston, Texas. So they really had nothing
Sure,
but love and support for
sure.
me throughout both gymnastics and also in diving. They just didn't know. And
Mhm,
there was no space to like
mhm.
think about thoughts and feelings and, you
Sure.
know, what it meant for them. So, if there's anything my parents understood is how to give up your homeland for something else and for opportunity.
Mm,
And that's exactly what
mm.
happened for me as well I'm sure from their perspective. Um, anyway, in the beginning, gymnastics was fantastic. It was a caliber and quality of gymnastics that was really good for me. I was very hyperactive. I totally would have been diagnosed with ADHD,
Mhm.
but gymnastics was certainly my home. It was
Mhm.
not just, people will say it's like an after school. No, it's not an after school activity. It was the place where I could be sad, I could be angry, I could be
Mhm.
joyful. It was more than a playground. It was like a place that I had actual control, because my life at home was very much out of control. My parents, as amazing and lovely as my parents are individually, they were pretty terrible together.
Mm.
There's a lot of tension in the household. So
Mhm.
gymnastics was that outlet for me. So, and I just happened to have a lot of talent and I really enjoyed it. I wasn't afraid. I could throw my body off of anything. I loved it. I got like highs off of it as a 7 year
Mhm.
old.
Yeah.
Basically, I got into gymnastics because aside from being hyperactive, the 1984 Olympics were around and Mary Lou Retton did a front flip on
Mhm.
beam.
Mhm.
And as my sister said, that basically I was like, that's not a big deal. And I basically went into the other room and did a front flip. And
Nice.
she was
That's
like, we need
awesome.
to do something with this
Yeah,
energy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
probably driving people crazy too. I mean, um, anyway, so Houston was great in the beginning and I just loved it. I loved the team that I was on was like the Hopes team. It was like a group of very, very young gymnasts. And they were sort of being, I want to say prepared for the elite track, but there
Mhm.
was also grooming involved too. So
Mhm.
it would, because we were so little, you would get the long hours. You would also get like some of the put downs and things from the coach at the time, but you kind of got used to it. You would get used to when the coach was in a, and this is not to say that like coaches aren't human beings. Everyone's a human being.
Mhm.
There are days that
Mhm.
we wake up and
Mhm.
we've had a bad
Mhm.
day already, and we
Mhm.
come and we bring it to wherever we're at.
Sure.
But we would get like little spats of it. Uh, I can't really remember. You can even ask my childhood best friend, Mariana. She has like a better memory of this, of my actual ascension. But I
Mhm.
went from the Hopes team to basically what was considered Group One, which was the bulk of elites at this gym, pretty quickly, like within a year, I think. So
Mm.
I was the youngest on this elite team, even though I wasn't an elite yet. I went back then, it was classes. So I went from basically class three up into junior B elite practically within a year and a half, maybe. It's like really, really fast. So by the time I was about 10, I was already an elite gymnast and doing all the elite programming stuff.
Mhm.
But also in this team, which then we started really I really started experiencing the pressure and the put times. You just
Mhm.
start getting very much used to hearing a lot of that. The comments made about body, I'm stupid, I'm an imbecile if my coach had a
Wow.
bad day. Sometimes just getting kicked out for no reason or what felt like no reason. I didn't get my grips fast enough on. That's a good story.
Mm.
There was once we
Mm.
didn't get our grips fast enough on in morning practice. This is like 6 o'clock in the morning. So the Group One team was subjected to about 8 hours of straight conditioning.
Wow.
So, things like that. But ultimately, my experience was like I had a really great team. I loved the Group One gymnasts. There was a lot of drama that happened in the coaching staff. So by 19, well, really, there's a couple things. One is I had a very traumatic arm break on the left side with this coach. It was a very traumatic experience. I'm not going to recount here.
Mhm.
But soon after that, I healed up enough, except I had this sort of like abnormal healing thing where my arm can't turn. To date, my arm cannot turn all the way.
Mm.
But, we didn't talk about it. It wasn't quote unquote a problem. I was healed well enough and then went through the ranks. I was a junior national champion in 1989, so everything seemed to be going well. And then around 1989, the other elbow started having this like
Mm.
basically it's like pitcher's
Mm.
elbow, more of a chronic issue of
Mm.
bone chips happening in the joint.
Mm.
And as we know now with kids, anytime that you have any injuries to the joints, that's really while the child's body is still developing, it can just develop very abnormally and cause even more
Mhm.
problems down the line.
Mhm.
So I had gone to a doctor. That was our doctor. The doctor said, you have a cartilage problem, you have a bone chip problem. You should probably stop for a bit and work on it. Ended up getting a second opinion to a set of doctors that the coaches at this place basically had a lot of connections to. He said it was tendonitis. We went through this whole year. I had this like
Mm.
magnificent year. But then obviously the bone chips got worse in 1990. And then I ended up having to have surgery. I had the
Mm.
surgery, it was probably like in April. At the same time, I had an invitation to an international meet, which was one of the biggest meets of my life at that time. One of the head coaches was like, "You're 12. So, it's important for you to start your international experience because you're going to mess up in the beginning. It's anything that's new. You're going to be on a stage with the USSR
Mhm.
and China and like
Mhm.
all these big names. So you're going to mess up. So we need you to go." But at that point, I had just had surgery. And for them, since it was
Mm.
1990, they said, 2 years to Barcelona. So you got to get all these like the wiggles
Mhm.
out because we
Mhm.
expect you to mess up this year. Okay.
Mhm.
Not my choice. I don't even know why the doctor cleared me, but I did. So basically, 2 to 3 weeks after the surgery itself, I am in Japan
Ugh.
competing in this meet. And that was pretty much the nail on the coffin, to be honest, looking back, because
Mhm.
I'd never healed. My both elbows have
Mhm.
never, to date, have
Mhm.
never healed from basically 1988 through 1990. That culminated later on in, being 12 years old with arthritis, being told that I need to stop gymnastics, at least take a year off. I knew if I took a year off, the 92 window would have sailed.
Mhm.
And so it's my parents and my sister. I still remember because I was at this place called The Ranch, very traumatic place. But I got a
Mhm.
phone call from them saying, "After you're done with the ranch, you're coming home and
Mm.
you're done. We're done. We're done with this
Hmm.
shoes life." And so then I went back and I was just in a very, for a girl who had a lot of hyperactivity and a lot of energy, to go from that to just, you and I would see it as absolute depression, just couldn't get
Mm.
off the couch. And now I'm back in California. My sister's still in Texas. And I just went through it. So parents don't like that. My parents are not
Mhm.
used to that.
Mhm.
And they don't know what to do. So they ask my sister. My sister says, talks to people around, and then the story as well. A lot of gymnasts who are injured go into diving because it's a little bit easier on the body.
Mm.
Why didn't you try diving?
Mm.
And it happened to be that there, not but a 15-minute drive from our house, was the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center. And
Wow.
through some of the initiatives through the '84 Olympics, they built this like absolutely beautiful um, Olympic pool. It had great coaching. I mean, it was really wonderful. And we qualified for a subsidy, and so of course, I'm going to say yes. I'm a very obedient. You
Mhm.
ask me to do something,
Mhm.
I'm going to do it. I go to like the rec class, and you put an elite gymnast onto a board. I'm not
Mhm.
afraid. I'm going to flip
Mhm.
off. You just tell me which direction
Mhm.
to land. Just teach me how to land on my head versus on my feet.
Mhm.
And you make a very good diver.
Mhm.
And so, what turned out to be like one or two rec classes turned into a couple of private lessons with the head coach. And then
Mhm.
suddenly I'm on a team. But
Wow.
heart was not into it at all. My entire, looking back, my entire career with diving is one that my heart was not in.
Mm.
However, the structure was excellent for me and probably life
Mhm.
saving. I always say that gymnastics is my love, but diving saved my life.
Mm.
I had an amazing team, really wonderful human beings in that team. I had coaches that, especially in comparison to where I came from, were like incredibly kind. I mean, they almost feel like
Mhm.
pillows in comparison.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Hmm.
and so, I was always friendly, and I could always put a smile on the outside, but
Mhm.
inside, certainly harboring depression. It was
Mm.
definitely growing that I can look back now. At the time, I just thought, I don't fit in, something is wrong with me. Um,
Mhm.
I have a body shape that is not, skinny and flat chested. And, I had a large chest and I'm very curvy. So then I would get lots of comments about my body,
Mm.
which led to years of eating disorder. But on the whole,
Mm.
relatively like a lot of, in comparison to where I came from, it was kindness. So,
Mm.
I'm very friendly. I make friends with whoever I can go around. And so when it came time for college, I got recruited by a bunch of different places, and it was great. It was lovely. I ended up going to UCLA because it was most economical. I was a way for my family not to have to pay for school. I'm so
Mhm.
lucky. And I had an amazing team there. I had amazing coaches there. And the same injury that plagued gymnastics was the same injury that ended
Mhm.
diving. This is like my senior year at UCLA. I was probably coming off the best summer of diving,
Mm.
which was very interesting because my junior year of diving, I ended up having my first like hit the board experience
Oh, wow.
and messed with my head. And I
Wow.
totally had the mental block when it came to inward 2.5 on 3 meter.
Wow.
In the summers, we would go usually back, I would go back to my club team and then usually compete for seniors. And that summer, I told the head coach then, his name is Jeff Stabile back then. And I was like, I'm really struggling. I hit the board and I can't get past it. And this is amazing. He said, why don't you just take the summer off and just come to practices and play
Mhm.
and just have
Mhm.
fun, but don't compete.
Mhm.
And and initially I was like, oh God, what are people going to think? What are whatever? But
Mhm.
coach said it. So if coach said it, I'm going to go with it. And I had the best summer. It
Mhm.
was awesome. I actually found myself really enjoying diving, and I was
Mhm.
doing things that I hadn't really. I was doing like front. I was trying to practice around with front 3.5s
Mhm.
on 3 meter and like back 2.5 pikes. Things that
Mhm.
like I wouldn't have done before, but I was just having fun, and it was great. But when I went back to UCLA, I had already started having problems just even getting out of the pool.
Mhm.
So set up MRIs, fall of 1998, and the doctor's like, you have the elbows of, like, it's just inflamed arthritis all
Wow.
over, and there's bone chips everywhere, and it keeps ripping up the joint. So the doctors said, I think you should stop diving. It's like, wow. Sideswipe. I didn't even know what to do
Mhm.
with that.
Mm.
He's like, don't you want to live a normal? I always love that. Don't you want to live a
Yeah,
normal
yeah.
life, or just go live a normal life? I didn't
Mhm.
even know what normal was. It's like
Sure.
12 years of this life of 6 to 7 days of training. And
Mhm.
then I didn't even think about it. He's like, what do you want to do after you graduate? Like, are you going to keep diving after graduation? And no one had even asked me that. I haven't even thought about
Sure.
that.
Sure.
But I thought, gosh, you're right. I probably would stop diving. I don't know. And so he's like, please go live your life. We'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. And then I still remember walking from the medical center up the hill to Sunset, where the 1 meter and the 3 meter were, where we'd have practices. And the coach said, like, what the doctor's saying. It's like, I'm done. And I can still close my eyes and see my friend Rose on 3 meter look at me and say, no, like
Mm.
we had lost a number of teammates at that time to injury. Someone had also taken medical
Mm.
for her knees, and somebody else had stopped because of her back. Yeah. And the wild thing, Thomas, about that is that I think about it now, I cannot remember my last practice.
Mm.
Like, I didn't get the
Mhm.
oh, this is my last, let me say thank you, gratitude, whatever. I
Sure.
didn't, it was
Sure.
still at the end of my career was like taken from injury. Um,
Sure.
so, I mean, that's long winded in itself, but that really began the journey of like
Yeah.
the
Well,
identity foreclosure
I want to give you a
and just being
hug.
lost.
I want to like teleport and give you a hug
I
because
received the hug.
that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot. And there's so much in there, and it makes sense why you do what you do. And I know you pretty well through our phone call. We have very different childhoods, but there is something again beautiful in the challenge and the push. And we don't want. I know you're not a big fan of the everyone wins a trophy, right? The eighth place trophies. Yet you lost so much. You lost so much, and your story is such a good cautionary tale, which is why I wanted to have you on here for parents, because there's so many parents that we both work with. You're, heavily, heavily, heavily in the elite athletic world, but my families operate from that same fear-based system. And more often than not, a lot of decisions are driven by fear of my families, right? What if my right kid struggles? What if my kid overdoses? What if this or that, right? And it's almost always ominous. And the fear becomes the driver for this relational pattern dynamic decision process that more often than not is incredibly unhealthy and isn't going to help, right? Launch, in my case, the work I'm doing, the launch that young adult. In your case, on the one hand, it must be so hard for you to try to help parents find that fine line, also manage your own stuff. Because in just listening to you, it's so obvious, Laura, you have done deep, 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 deep inner work. The way you are able to talk about your family in a very love-based way, in a way that shows that you've done enough work to realize they were not super women, Superman, superwoman, and that they were dealing with their own trauma, and they exported parenting onto a system to a degree that on one level emanates from hope and emanates from love and emanates from an opportunity. And like you said, they had to give up so much. And then there are these people, we don't have to get into the specific names in that world, right, that are godlike, whether by themselves, more often than not, putting themselves on a pedestal, or somebody else. So how do you help parents, again, find that fine line? Because this world, I don't know that it's any less gross, I got to be honest. I'm not in the gymnastics world, but I could speak to the soccer world, and it cracks me up, when the pyramid in soccer, these clubs that talk about, this and that and the ladder, and they speak in such a definitive way. And there are families that hook, line, and sinker, dive in. And again, it is from fear of Johnny or Susie or whoever, right? The FOMO and what if is often the narrative. How do you help families, again, work with, knowing full well you've been there, there are margins here, there are centimeters or milliseconds, right, to elite versus non-elite, and we want to hold ourselves accountable to a high standard, and we need to train really hard, right? But also not lose everything you lost.
Oh, that is a very loaded question, which is so good. Yeah. And I think my first reaction is to just remind people that it's a journey, that just because we think of one thing and you can believe it in a moment, in real time, when you're inside, immersed in the environment of pressure and achievement, it's very easy to get caught up in it. It's a community in and of itself. And I can see this because, even in my own family, my sister got caught up very much in it. It's the way that you survive. It's another group that you have to survive in order to get any attention, be fed in some way, shape, or form. She also had to participate in that too, in order for me to be okay in that system. So, first and foremost, I remind, at the very least, anyone who comes to me knows that usually there's something wrong. Now, there's like the two kinds of parents. You and I have talked about this. There's like the kind of parent that reaches out that's like, my kid has lost confidence in their sport. And sometimes that call for help is coming from the child. Sometimes it's something that the parent is noticing in the child. And that in and of itself is a certain kind of assessment. Then there's the other kind of parent that's like, I'm worried about my kid. They're struggling and they're not enjoying their sport anymore. You can kind of tell flavor and quality and difference in the two asks of what parents are coming to us for. And so, for the ones that are like, they're not enjoying it, it breaks my heart to see that. And then, so that's the kind of where the parent's noticing, and maybe the kid has asked for help. And so just certainly in the talk with them to find out like what's going on, whose dream is this? Is this the kid's dream? Is this the parent's dream? Is this like, maybe it's a little bit of both. The goal first and foremost always is to remind myself included that no matter what feelings I might have because of my own traumas and victories in my story, that when I'm sitting with a parent and or their child athlete, that it's like a snapshot in what's going to be a journey for them too.
Sure.
And to, it's first and foremost is to find out what they want and to try to work from there. We have to start where the client is, period, and support them where they're at. Some people don't really want to look at their relationship to sport or their
Sure.
own stuff.
Sure.
And me bringing it up could, very gently and lovingly and kindly as much as possible, I can only hope that it plants the seed that, especially if it's like a parent thing that
Hmm.
they need healing from, try to encourage and hope that it will lead them to their own healing of their own whatever is going on in their life or whatever they came from, especially as it relates to sport or pressure or expectation.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, if it's like coming from the kid, it's actually a lot easier. If it was just the
Hmm.
kid, in some ways, it's much easier. But oftentimes, right. It is a collaboration between parent, provider, coach, athlete, and so it's so dynamic. It's so complicated. A little bit like a web. So you
Hmm.
touch one side of the web, and it's going to reverberate throughout the
Hmm.
rest.
Hmm.
So, I mean, first and foremost, I just try to be kind and empathetic and loving. It's all about love because these are spaces that historically, I mean, sports is in and of itself a generational trauma. Like sports itself is rooted in warfare. We have
Hmm.
millennia of, the first athletes were soldiers and very wealthy people, but mainly soldiers
Well,
whose lives weren't even seen as
sure,
human.
sure,
So we're
sure,
trying to now break into
sure,
seeing an athlete as human first. So
sure.
that's going to include not just the athlete, but the parents and the coaches. That's what trauma informed
Hmm.
perspective is about. So I just
Hmm.
try to be kind and loving and model that first. I do believe it as well. I try to understand that, like, the intention is, I want to help. It's their solution is trying to be, they're being that way because that's the solution that is available to them.
Hmm.
But it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean it's going to be a healthy one.
What I was thinking when you were talking is, if we could go back in a time machine and talk to 9-year-old you or 12-year-old you or 14-year-old you, you could tell me I'm wrong here, but I don't know that you would even have been able to articulate what your needs were in that moment because of you are not trying to play expert here at all. You talked about culture, you talked about stress, you talked about a little maybe quasi PTSD of the family, right, going through a lot. And so already you were set up to suppress, to push down, right? It wasn't a very the norms of your childhood or family system were not to be able to come forward and say, let me take my internal temperature and share how I'm feeling, what's going on for me, what's my thought. And I'm not able even to take a moment to decide, right? It was formulaic. And then on top of that, you were thrown into this very prescriptive recipe, let's call it, very linear. It's like a video game, right? And that could be really challenging. And so the piece that you just talked about of just trying to slow the fudge down a little bit and make contact with the athlete or make contact with the parent, try to discern whose why is what. That's a beginning. That's a beginning. And I think what you said about sport being historically like a non-human, if you will, activity, it is true. I mean, I watched Nadal's documentary recently. If you haven't seen it, it's very good. And he has perforations in his stomach from taking so many anti-inflammatories. So I had the same thing. I had ulceritis from taking Advil, and as I was trying to get a scholarship in my senior year. And that wasn't because I was trying to self-harm. I got really bad advice, which was to take these painkillers before the game, which I was doing with water and no food. But Nadal says in the documentary, it's actually very good. And he's actually not a robot, but he says literally those anti-inflammatories and the holes in my stomach account for 10 majors. He won 22 titles. So, and that's a man who appears at that point is incredibly wealthy and is not a 9-year-old and is articulate. And it's really interesting. I think you'll like it because I didn't know this, his uncle was his coach. And it's a very
Mm.
interesting dynamic that shows up where the uncle was incredibly no rest, no rest, no rest, no rest. And then I don't want to give it away, but similar to your summer off, there's a kind of a new culture that gets ushered in. And it's very interesting. how, finding again that masochism and push can be to some degree healthy when we're talking at that level, but it goes off the rails pretty quickly. And the documentary shows that, as does your story. So how do you help families make contact with themselves? Because I think a lot of families are whirling dervishes, and they're either just opening their brain and allowing that sports director or that model the world I find myself in with my sons, is everybody is having their child reclass to get that advantage, to be older. My kids have no desire, nor do we, to do that. I don't care if that quote unquote hurts my kids. To me, it doesn't hurt my kids. It's actually healthy, because the last thing my kids want to do is one more year of school. They're like, get me the F out of here. I'm tired of sitting in a desk. So it is that innate wisdom, I think, is a lot of times lacking. And one of the things I do through the program is not only provide, of course, my perspective, but is let families begin to hear their own voice amidst all the chaos, all the noise, and they can get very transactional and really strip things down and not even give themselves a moment to make contact with themselves or their daughter or their son. And then the same is true for these little micro robots that you work with, that you were to a degree, not necessarily even because you wanted to be. So how do you help families slow down? How do you help them think differently? How do you help them consider another piece of data other than that very, linear perspective that they have?
Yeah. Great question. To be honest, I think it's a lot of it is seed planting, because,
Mm,
by the time we're talking with them, I mean, even as a parent and talking to other parents who might be, I'm like you, I don't care. I just want my kid to have fun, to learn to be a good teammate, to learn leadership, how to nourish his body right, how to hydrate and rest and have
mhm,
balance. Also ultimately know that, you know, gosh, I always think about a couple years ago, he was in his first AAU team, and
mhm,
we were at watching a game, and I don't even know how many turnovers, and he's so
mhm.
little, but each time I could see it, I could just, as a parent, we can feel it. You
Sure,
can
sure,
feel the
sure,
self-esteem going
sure.
down in your child as
Sure.
you're watching them. And at some point in the game, he did another turnover, and he's turning around, he's running back, and he's finds me and makes eye contact, and I just kind of nodded and tried to
Mhm,
smile. And as we walked out from the game, it was quiet. I didn't say anything. I knew anything I was going to say was going
mhm,
to piss off this little one. So I wasn't
mhm,
out in the car. And I just said, I love you.
mhm.
And he was like, I know, mom. He's like, I'm so pissed. And I
He's
said,
like, "I'm low key pissed off,
I'm
mom."
okay, pissed off. Don't, whatever. I said, okay, that's all I'm saying.
Uh,
Here if you want to talk. And
mhm,
that's it. And then about halfway home on the drive, then he was, then it all comes out as frustrations or whatever.
mhm,
And, I was like, in my heart, there was like two things that happened. There was the person who wants to fix it, like to go to coaching, and I
mhm,
was the athlete. So let's try to think of things differently, try to be
mhm,
positive.
mhm,
But there's a part of me that was the parent that was like, what does
mhm,
he need right now? And he's too little to tell me what he needs. So I am
mhm.
his parent and I know him. So I know he needs me to shut the F up and
That's awesome.
be supportive. And all he needs to know is that I love him anyway.
Mm, mm,
And so he had his whole piece. And I said, I'm hearing all the things. That sounds frustrating. And I just had to almost put a therapy cap on this. Like, that
mhm,
sounds really frustrating that you felt that
mhm,
way.
mhm,
And I just tested it out. I did test. I said, is there anything
mhm,
that you can see that
mhm,
was
mhm,
helpful for today,
mhm,
or something that went, I didn't want to
mhm,
use the word good because he wasn't using the word
mhm,
good. Everything to
mhm,
him at that moment was shambles. So
mhm,
for me to be like, what went well today? He would have been
mhm.
like, shut the
Yeah,
F up, mom, kind of thing. And so he just
but
was quiet for a while.
there
Yeah.
wasn't something good, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
you know and the thing you did there, and I want you to finish, of course, is was like you said, is you chose the good parenting approach. And I think that's hard. And I'll share some stupid stories in car rides, because I've made a million errors. Now I'm actually fantastic, I can say that unflinchingly, in terms of post games. I can say that unflinchingly. I'm a really great sports dad now after a lot of failings and finding my own process. But what you chose there is just really good parenting. And I think, again, I'm not telling you, you're the expert in your space, but I think for me, a lot of the families get so fixated on, well, my child's autistic, or, this is happening, or what do we do here? Or what do we do about this very technical thing? Or, da, 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 da. And at the end of the day, almost always there's just really good sound judgment. There's really good parenting practices. We can be, I say this all the time, like we can be empathic and compassionate and still hold a boundary. We can have guardrails and structure and still be available emotionally or fun or whatever. And families have, I think, a hard time, especially when they're in such a space like that. Yeah. And so nice job not abdicating your motherhood for some supposed sports mom role.
Thank you. It was hard. It was a lot of grappling on the inside. And to your point, as well as you and your journey in learning how to be a great dad in the car post game, like that's what it is. It's a journey. Certainly that moment, up until that moment, I totally have messed up and tried to go coach or whatever. And you could just see it backfire, the frustration, and I'm getting frustrated. And, I think at some point I was like, okay, let me think about, especially given where I came from. And I'm pretty hyper vigilant when it comes to like coaches and teams. So, we've experienced stuff with actually that team itself. One of the coaches there, it's a long story, but one of the coaches there had said something that was really off-putting. We've had to have a conversation about that. And have had a lot of conversations with my kid about that. And sometimes he can receive it. And sometimes it's like, I don't want to talk about it, Mom. It doesn't bother me because I can see he's existing in that microcosm environment that if he doesn't conform and he doesn't show that he can handle it, he's going to be booted. So I recognize that we're always grappling. There's no like, you do X means Y. It's not going to be like that. It's like a web. Again, it's just this dynamic, ongoing, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, 3 steps diagonal. And that's okay, because then what your experience is, mine was in that moment, is that you end up learning what you need to do as a parent to just be. And I think that's really important, is that that we anchor into what's the point in all of this. And that for me was in the end, when I asked myself, like, what is my role in this? What do I want from this? And all I said was, I just want him to know that he is loved no matter what. That's something that my parents definitely tried to give me. I couldn't see it until like many years later, but that's what I come back to. That's why I don't have like resentment towards my parents today, is because, they just showed up often with a pot of rice, and they didn't know what to say, but they would just be present and they would just love me anyway. And that's what I want. For my kid.
They provided you with an external system that was their best thinking in the moment.
Yeah.
And the best thinking in the moment is not always the best thinking, right? And that's true for me. And like you said, it's a journey. I give you so much credit for not over-identifying with the hurt part of your child and then trying to shield them too much, so that you swing the pendulum so hard away from a coach that is actually incredibly appropriate but holds a really high standard, but can create a culture of failing forward to get there. And I give you credit for also not, which I've spilled probably more than you, maybe you have, but I come from a not as extreme heart as you, but I come from working class family. And for me, when I look back on it, it was 100% me. My parents, I had to get a soccer scholarship to go to university. So it was like, okay, let me do this. And so much so, always overtraining, always getting injured at the start of preseason because I had put myself through this masochistic preseason the whole year, but definitely the summer, that was far worse than preseason. It was like preseason was like a joke to me. And so when I look at my kids who are not entitled by proxy of the context that they're in, but to my folkloric history of my own come up can be in my eyes, and I have absolutely projected and displaced things onto my kids. That was my earlier journey that I thankfully can say I've exhausted. However, as someone who's played at your level, and I played in college, and I had an offer to play professionally and played semi-pro, my kids also don't train enough when it comes to, shouldn't say both my kids, one of my kids, if they're both listening, based on the words that he says from an aspirational standpoint, the feet don't line up with that. And that can be tricky as a parent, because if you've been at your level, way beyond me, there are certain scientific facts, but we don't want to lose ourselves in over-identifying with that rubric. And you're doing a beautiful job of saying, I want there to be this deep, deep, deep attachment, irrespective of all of the turbulence on the outside, and I want that to be, I want to be a safe harbor no matter what. And I don't want to lose myself in the outcome for AAU and NBA or against AAU and NBA. And that takes a lot. So kudos to you. And I'm thankfully also, I couldn't give two shits. In fact, I'm the reverse. I'm more against my kids playing in college as a destination, because I'm always like, they're talking to coaches now, my oldest, constantly. And I'm always like, who gives a shit? Like, not like who gives a shit as in a demeaning way, but who gives a shit about that conversation per se, because you don't even know anything about that university. I'm always like, what is the major that you're interested in? What do you like about that school? Or what is the cool, what else are they going to offer? Because my kids are not going to play in La Liga or the Premier League in England. But they absolutely have a shot right now. Both of them, they're in the conversation to play in college. So, but that's helpful. But there's a way to be in both places, if that makes sense, with situational awareness. And I definitely struggle to get to where I am early, because I was way too, not so much I even cared about ever thinking they're going to play D1 or pro or whatever, but just I had a hard time, the words not lining up with the feet, because integrity is my highest value.
Yeah.
And that's my own shit, and then I work with families where the teen is going to wilderness therapy, so I'm like looking at risk in a much more disproportionate way. So I just give you a lot of credit. And I think the beauty of you, and for any parent listening that has a child on either side, that either their interest or motivation is kind of waning, please reach out to Laura. Or you're feeling like they're heading toward, no offense, Laura, but potentially an eating disorder or a process that's too pathological and unhealthy that you heard Laura go through, that you don't want your son or daughter to go to. Laura can be a great guide for that, because you've been there, done that, right? And I just hope parents listening too, they just stop and they figure out their why or their North Star. My hill I'm going to die on, similar to you. Yours is like more safe harbor love. Mine is definitely connection, attachment for sure. But mine is just, for me, impeccability with their word, not again to be D1, but just that's my hill. That's really, that's helped me to be like, okay, you're stating this or stating that. No worries. I don't care what it is, but let's just make sure we're on the path to that. And then now what's really cool with my older kids is the field does the natural consequence for me. When my son doesn't train or lift or whatever, and he gets bodied off the ball, it's awesome, because that's not me. And so it's a really nice thing now where I'm doing a really good job of flying at the right altitude and allowing those natural consequences, if you will, both positive or negative, the feedback to be happening vis-a-vis someone outside of me playing a coaching role.
Yeah.
What would you say, before we jump here, what would you say if you could just give 3 quick or 2 do's and don'ts for families that you've learned through your work, through your own journey? What do you want to leave people with as the most salient golden nuggets?
Mm. That's a good one. So number one is, and I do this in the some of the workshops that I do, the AP method, that we work on mission.
Mm.
So just like the anchoring, like
Mm-hmm.
when the seas get stormy and we're in our
Mm-hmm.
little rowboat, what is going to anchor you? You're still going to
Mm.
get tossed a little bit, but at least you won't get all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is our mission? So, my mission, as you said, safe harbor. I also do want my kids to learn like nothing comes easy. As my sister used
Mm-hmm.
to say, nothing comes to you in a silver
Mm-hmm.
platter. So, you do have to
Mm-hmm.
put in the work. Cannot abandon your team. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to do this, you're not into the sport 95%, but you did sign up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can
Got
you
to
be
finish.
the best
Yeah.
teammate? How can you be a leader that way? How can you be supportive? Because there's other character building pieces to every experience. So, but what's my mission in it? So
Mm.
when things go awry, kids not getting as much playing time, coach said something that whatever, and we have to just zip our mouth and stick our hands under our laps and just let the
Mm-hmm.
coach.
Mm-hmm.
Then we hold on to this mission of what is my goal for myself, not my kid. I want my kid to
Mm-hmm.
go D1
I
blah,
love
not
that.
the kid's
I love
goal.
that. I
What's
love that.
my goal?
Yeah.
My goal is to be safe harbor and to be a person that my kid knows that they can always come back to, regardless
Mm.
of the outcome. So that's number one. Build your mission, figure out what you want to going to anchor to when the seas get stormy. Number
So
two,
good. That's so good. Yeah.
number two, take care of yourself. Make
Mm.
sure that you are also nourishing yourself because we know that our kids are watching us. They are still, 0 to 6 is the most formidable growth of the brain. From 6 to once they go to college, they're watching us the entire time. They are attuned
Mm-hmm.
to us. They know the moment we walk into a room, they know for they're sad or mad or something went right. They know everything. So if we take care of ourselves, if we model what it means to self-care, to nourish, hydrate, love on ourselves, love on our loved ones, our neighbors, our kids learn how to do that too. You know, that's huge. They like the stuff that the nonverbal stuff. So take care of ourselves. We'll model how our kids are going to be able to take care of themselves. And number three, unless there's like signs of abuse, let coaches coach.
Mm.
There's no need to be screaming on the sidelines as the third, fourth, fifth coach. They already have coaches. You
Preach,
paid money
sister.
for your coaches to coach. So
Mm-hmm.
let the coaches friggin' coach.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're like
A
loving
good coach,
coaches.
especially if they're a
Yeah.
good coach. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like we waste as parents, we waste our coaches' time and energy of
Mm-hmm.
them worrying about what we think about them and trying
Mm-hmm.
to placate us. So I always tell coaches, make your things clear at the beginning of the season before all those practices start. You got together
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, like make everything clear, everybody's on the same page, and then move forward. And, parents, let coaches coach.
Um, I want to first off thank you so much for being on here, and I just want to go back to number one. I wrote down anchor point and mission. I gonna steal that or mush that into the second peak of the Four Peaks Parents Program, because the second peak is called emotional mastery, and use the word storm. And there's a whole thing in there about becoming unflappable amidst your kid's storm, because if we're dysregulated, we ain't creating co-regulation, right?
That's right.
But what I love about what you said, and it's so true, I was just saying this the other day, I was being interviewed for an article. I said, when was the last time anybody sat down and wrote down who they are as a parent? When was the last time a parent wrote quarterly goals for themselves? When was the last time a parent even just said, who am I dadding like? Who am I momming like? What was my kind of norms in my childhood? What do I want the norms to be my kids' childhood? It cracks me up when I work with so many, of course, C-suite executives who have business coaches, growth coaches who are writing, quarterly goals, daily goals, weekly goals. They're reading leadership books. They're going through all these leadership conferences. They have KPIs out the wazoo. And yet we never really sit down And so I just want to encourage everyone listening to really follow all three of those brilliant pieces from Laura. But take a moment and just figure out, what is the mission, or what is the hill you want to die on, or what are we trying to exhaust? What are we trying to bring forward? It will help you when things get really wonky and stormy. I just want to add, of course, if anyone's listening, I say this every single week or every single episode, and you have a loved one who's struggling with mental health, addiction, or neurodivergence and is not living the life you believe they could, and they're failing to launch into adulthood, or it's a teen who's stuck, please go to the Four Peaks Parents website. Of course, you can find previous episodes, you can sign up for the free newsletter, and you can book a free discovery call with me to explore whether or not this program makes sense for you. I would love to learn more about your family story. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. It means the world to help the podcast grow. There's a lot that goes into making this show happen. I'm coming up on over 2 years now, which is fantastic. And if you are concerned again about your teen athlete, whether they're at the perfect place or not, whether again they're waning in their interest, or they might be overcooked in your perspective, or you're just struggling to figure out how to be the most effective athletic mom, a parent of an athlete, please go to Laura's website. What's your website again?
lcollinslcsw.com.
lcollinslcsw.com. Cannot thank you enough. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for all the amazing tips. And I just so appreciate you. So thank you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Thomas. You're amazing. Thank you for creating this space.
No worries. Take care, everybody. Be well. Bye.
Bye.